What's up mga kuya? Welcome back to the channel. So this is the UMIDIGI A13 Pro and this is my video on it. So I wouldn't necessarily call this a review, although part of it has a review on it, and more of me complaining and comparing this to something like the Redmi 10. Because if you didn't know, the UMIDIGI A13 Pro and Xiaomi Redmi 10 are basically at the same price point. And honestly for me, the UMIDIGI A13 Pro doesn't deserve the Pro name. Like, nothing about it warrants for the Pro name for this phone. It's a budget smartphone from UMIDIGI that costs 8 to 9,000 pesos depending if you're getting the 4GB variant or 6GB variant, but with the same storage of 128 gigs, which is really nice to get 128 gigs on a budget smartphone. And I know that it's not really fair for me to say that a budget smartphone is boring, but that's just what it is. First off, just look at the specs of the UMIDIGI A13 Pro compared to the Xiaomi Redmi 10. So obviously for the same price, the Xiaomi Redmi 10 is definitely a better buy and better option, like objectively. Like spec-wise, this only has a Unisoc T610, which I actually don't really want to disrespect a company, but that chipset is actually underwhelming. It only has a 6.7 inch, not complaining about the size, but the resolution. So this only has a 720p display as compared to the 1080p on the Redmi 10. This doesn't have dual stereo speakers, and it doesn't have any fast charging capability, so it's only capable of 10 watts of charging. So paired with a 5150 mAh battery, it charges from 0 to 100 in 3 hours. So first off, I guess, is my actual review regarding the device. So regarding build quality and design, not a fan of the design. It kind of has like this, although I like the texture of the back, it's kind of a matte, like non-fingerprinty magnet back. I'm not a fan of this Beyond Dreams printed here, and I guess I don't mind the UMIDIGI branding here, but they actually had to copy the design of the iPhone, at least the camera modules here. Although compared to the iPhone, you actually have a smaller module here on the middle camera. You have your LED flash here on the right side. You have your power button / fingerprint scanner, which is surprisingly fast and accurate for the most part. You have your volume rockers, which are not that clicky. On the left side, you have a hybrid dual SIM card tray, so meaning that you can either put 2 SIM cards, 2 nano SIMs, or 1 nano SIM and 1 micro SD card. And I guess one of the few things that I actually like about this phone is that it has an extra button here on the left side, like kind of a, well, not really a Bixby button, as you can actually assign this to pretty much any command or function that you want. So for me, I assigned it to a single press to take a screenshot and double press to open the camera app. At the top, you have your 3.5mm headphone jack along with your secondary noise cancelling microphone. And at the bottom, you have your main microphone, USB Type-C charging port, and your single bottom firing speaker. So again, no dual stereo speakers here on the A13 Pro. And I would say build quality is solid because the phone doesn't really flex all that much if you try to bend it. Although I will admit that the phone actually feels cheap in the hand. So we have like a plastic unibody design here, so no separate frame or plastic back. And moving on to the display, so again we have a 6.7 inch 720p LCD display, and for a budget phone, it's actually quite good. Not great, but good for a budget phone. Viewing angles are also good, and what really surprised me is that it's actually plenty readable even in direct sunlight, so it does get decently bright, and you can actually have an enjoyable viewing experience here, even though it only has a single bottom firing speaker. And almost forgot to mention that this has a teardrop notch for the front-facing camera. So regarding the display on the A13 Pro, it's good for a budget phone. And moving on to the cameras on the A13 Pro, which usually budget phones tend to suck at, or like this is the most compromise that budget phones have. So we have a 48 megapixel main sensor with an f1.8 aperture, an 8 megapixel ultra wide with an f2.2 aperture, and a 5 megapixel macro lens with an f2.4 aperture. And at the front, we have a 16 megapixel front facing camera with an f2.2 aperture. So pictures taken in good lighting is, I would describe, as good for a budget phone, but the main weakness is dynamic range, so it tends to overexpose a lot and just crush the shadows. And by the way, these pictures are taken with HDR in auto mode. And then pictures taken in low light scenarios or nighttime shots are just bad. Even though this does have a dedicated night mode, it doesn't really do anything. And these are the selfies that you can expect to get on the A13 Pro. And for videos, you can record up to 1080p at 30 FPS with no stabilization. And one weird thing is, even though in UMIDIGI's website it says that you can record up to 1080p at 30 FPS using the front-facing camera, here in the camera app you only have the option up to 720p when using the front-facing camera. Okay, so this is the vlog test for the UMIDIGI A13 Pro recording at 720p at 30 FPS, and what you're hearing right now is from the built-in microphone. And yeah, unfortunately you're only able to record at 720p using the front-facing camera, and there's no image stabilization available also. So camera performance on the UMIDIGI A13 Pro, I would describe as decent, not really bad, but yeah, decent. And moving on to performance, again, this only has 4 gigs of memory with 128 gigs of eMMC storage. And for me, if you were planning on buying the A13 Pro, then the 6 gig variant of this isn't really worth the additional cost. But performances I would describe as solid for a budget phone. So while it's fairly snappy for the most part, not having a 90Hz display makes this feel way slower compared to like other budget phones that actually have 90Hz displays, like the Redmi 10 again, sorry. So you can have a few apps open in the background, but that's it. Upload times are slow since again this only has eMMC storage. And just to show you guys that this has really solid performance for a budget phone, I'm gonna go ahead and play Genshin Impact. Impacto. So right now we're running Genshin Impact at the lowest graphic settings at 30 FPS. And for the most part, playing Genshin Impact on the A13 Pro is solid. Of course, it's not the smoothest experience, but it's playable. There are some occasional stutters, but nothing too major that the game would become unplayable. And regarding thermals, the only time that this actually like overheated to the point that it was really uncomfortable to hold was when downloading Genshin Impact but not actually playing Genshin Impact. That's actually brain dead. So if you were looking for a budget smartphone with solid gaming performance, then yeah, the UMIDIGI A13 Pro is, I would say, a good option. And the last thing, and another of the few things that I actually like about this phone, is the battery life. So with my usual medium to heavy use, so that's a combination of social media, watching videos, gaming, and some picture taking, I was able to get over 6 hours of screen on time, ending the day with over 50% left. So I can confidently say that the battery life of the A13 Pro is easily a 2-day battery life for most people, maybe even 3 if you're mainly just gonna use this for social media and the basic stuff. And this is one of those phones that you actually should charge overnight because it charges from 0 to 100 and again 3 hours. So yeah, so again, the UMIDIGI A13 Pro is solid as a smartphone, doesn't really deserve the Pro name. Like in general, I don't really like it when smartphone companies use the word Pro for their phones. But for example, something like the Poco X3 Pro, I can forgive that since it offers, well, basically Pro performance. And I guess the A13 Pro offers Pro battery life, but without any type of fast charging. So yeah, the A13 Pro is a good buy, but with phones like the, again, the Xiaomi Redmi 10 or even the Infinix Hot 11s is a way better value compared to this. Like if you just look at specs alone, then the A13 Pro is kind of a letdown. And again, I know that I don't really have the right to call a budget smartphone boring. I can't recommend this. Don't get me wrong, this is a solid offering. But again, with phones like these in the market, I'd much rather recommend these two phones compared to the UMIDIGI A13 Pro. So those are my thoughts and opinion on the A13 Pro. Let me know what you guys think in the comments if I'm being too hard on it. And if for some reason you still want to buy the A13 Pro because of the Class S battery life, then yeah, I'll leave the links to this in the description. And as always, leaving a like is the easiest way to support the channel. Consider subscribing if you like my content and turn on notifications for all so you'll be updated on my latest videos. Stay safe mga kuya. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Flip a bag, now I'm serving a Tesla. Going back, shawty with me, I stepped up. GTA for the ops, ain't no less stuff. Shawty born to be my angel, yeah, I'm blessed up. Cooking right up in the stew,